This is the Train to Perform podcast, the undisputed alpha podcast in training, fitness, and sports performance. Here you'll develop your skills with the cold hard facts in fitness, sports performance, recovery, and nutrition. Real, tried and true evidence, facts that have been proven to move you faster, move you stronger, and move you forward. Now here is your host to Train to Perform, Julian Sisman. Good afternoon. It's a pretty cold day here in outside the DC area. But this podcast is going to have a focus on nutrition today. The last week was focused mostly on athletes and their reasons of why they might not talk about their injuries. But anyways, so I get a lot of, so I work with not only athletes, but I also work with the general population, which includes people that want to get stronger, lose weight, build strength, build a healthy lifestyle to really enhance their life. And at the end of the day, I have a lot of people that come in that may be on some type of pills or this or that. And look, I'm not telling you that I'm a doctor, but and certain people need the drugs for whatever reason. But I believe, based on personal experience, because as I might have mentioned, but I haven't mentioned, I'll mention again that I do have I have a liver disease. I'm gonna be straight up, and just a little quick story. And I went from a pediatric doctor to a adult doctor when I was 21, and actually might have been 18. Yeah. Anyways, so back to the story. So the doctor, I went to see the doctor for the first time, and he tells me, "Hey man, why are you taking this pill?" I was like, "Look, I've been in the pediatric doctor. She told me I needed to take it, and I did a bunch of tests based on blood work, and I took the pill, didn't take it for about a month and a half, redid blood work, nothing changed." And right there, I was just, and he was right there. We were just concluded that this drug is not doing anything, and sometimes drugs can be more harmful than good. So right there and there, I came off that, and since then I haven't taken anything. So what do I conclude that? Well, honestly, I think it's obviously my lifestyle is pretty boring as far as what do I eat. I don't eat anything crazy, just because I try to maintain a certain body composition. And this can kind of roll right into the topic of today's podcast, which is on we all want to lose weight, or there are certain people that want to lose weight, actually, and this can have an effect on your muscle gain too. But we continue to have a hard time because what we're eating is, I believe, is the major factor in someone's body composition changing from more fat to muscle. And if you have trained with me before, if you have not, I'm a huge proponent on high protein diet when you're weight training, but also when you are have the thought of losing weight. The reason that I said that, and I have done a ton of research on this topic, and the research, not too long ago there was research on effect of high fat protein diet and resistance training on the preservation of fat mass during weight loss in overweight and obese adults. And they concluded that the high protein diet actually helped with the weight loss because the individuals were not eating as much, but it also helped with preserving the fat-free mass, which is obviously muscle. But obviously you can't, that this was in combination of resistance training. So, their weight training, and, the research was done on, 100 overweight and obese people between the ages of 55 and 80. So, we're talking like very old population here. Not very old, but an older population, and they're still, increasing muscle mass and decreasing fat mass. So it's possible at really any age to do this. So there should be no excuse. So what I'm saying is, when people want to lose weight, I think the biggest thing that needs to be, factored in is their nutrition. At the end of the day, you can honestly follow a pretty bad workout, and you can probably lose weight if you eat right. But if you want to accelerate the weight loss, a high protein diet is recommended. And what I suggest to people is that they at least have the amount of grams of protein that they weigh or they want to weigh. So if an individual weighs, I always say this to people when I make this example or have this conversation about a high protein diet, and I tell them, if you weigh 150, you're going to want to at least have 150 grams per day of protein. I know the RDA talks about 0.8, but there has been new research / a suggestion that the number should be at least 1.0 to 1.2, depending on the individual's goals. So why do high protein diets help with weight loss, fat loss, and things like that? Well, because they have an effect on satiety, and which means like the individual is going to be more satisfied because the protein takes longer thermogenically to digest. So if you're eating a decent amount of protein per meal, and I suggest at least 3 meals a day, protein in every single meal. I know it's hard for most people to eat breakfast, but the quickest way that you can, quickest and easiest way is honestly have a protein shake if you don't want to eat till 11 o'clock, because you're going to get protein. It's only 100 maybe 50 calories at most, and it's water, and it's really not that bad. And it will really be beneficial because, you're getting your protein numbers in for that day. But yes, as I was saying, it helps with, being satisfied and keeping ghrelin, which is like hormone that, kind of tells your body that you're hungry. It kind of keeps it suppressed, and it also will help keep your, blood sugar levels down because you're not really spiking it because there's not a lot of carbs from the protein. So moving, going from there, a great, I can give you an example of a great day of protein in every single meal. So say, for instance, breakfast, eggs, maybe steak and eggs, depending on how much protein you want to get. And you can throw in some vegetables. A suggestion would be throw in some spinach, start getting your greens early. Depending on if you meal prep or not, you would have some kind of protein at lunch. So let's say, if you meal prep, you have chicken or beef or something, with the side of, it really depends on, if you're working out that day, you might have a little carbs, you might have some vegetables. If you're not working out, it might be more vegetable and protein day. And then if you're working out, you might have a little pre-workout before you go work out. And then when you go home, you're going to have some kind of protein and vegetables and little carbs to refuel. So it doesn't have to be really complicated. It just needs to have protein at every single meal. Some kind of meat if you like meat. If you don't like meat, then some vegetarian options could be tofu, could be beans, could be fish, depending on what type of vegan or vegetarian that you are. So that's my suggestion there as far as that goes. It doesn't have to be, like I said, it doesn't have to be too complicated. But I kind of want to just touch on this topic because it's very important that, if your goal is to, lose weight, a high protein diet will really, really help you. And there's always that in person that wants to, say, oh, well, the high protein diet, how's its effect on, the kidney function? Because if you have a high protein diet, it will, it will affect, how the kidney functions, and then it could also harm the kidney, processing and all that stuff. There's actually a new research that came out that talks about how high protein diet does not affect kidney function at all. And this was done by, I believe, I read it in the International Sports Nutrition Journal, and it talked about how it doesn't have any harm. I think it really has a more harm on somebody that might already be predisposed with some type of kidney issues. But people with healthy kidneys does not have any effect. So, but then to talk about this topic, to take this topic and go on the reverse and say, hey, I'm an individual that wants to gain muscle mass. It's the same thing. You still want a high protein diet, but you also want to make sure that you have a high calorie diet, because if you want to increase muscle mass, you're going to need to increase your intake of calories, because that's the only way you're going to be able to grow. But you also need to make sure that you have enough protein every single day around the same amount. So what I'm about to say really goes for both individual wanting to lose weight, individual that wants to gain weight, especially for muscle, is that making sure that you maintain the same amount of protein per day is very important. Because it's a compounding, it's like a compound effect. The same thing is you put money in the bank. So every single day, if you can be consistent, day after day, hitting, the right macro of protein, will help with, either you are going to lose weight because you're under eating, but you're still maintaining a certain protein amount, and that's going to help preserve muscle mass, build muscle. But then it's also, you got to understand that if you eat, more protein, more food, you're going to increase muscle, you're going to increase mass. but you also gonna get to a point where like you might be a little bit fat, but and this is for individual that wants to gain weight, but you keep doing resistance training and all that kind of stuff, it will work itself out. But you have to maintain the protein amount, especially if you keep building muscle. Your metabolic rate is going to go up a little bit. So I always suggest to people that if you really want to know your fat-free mass and fat mass, to get a composition test. Honestly, the most accurate is going to be a DEXA scan. If you live in the DC area, there's a couple places you can go to. If you live in Ashburn, you can go to the Georgetown GW's. They have like a wellness place that you can go to. You can pay like, I think it's like $150 or $100. You can get a resting metabolic rate and your DEXA scan. I'll put the information in the show notes. And then if you live in the Bethesda, Rockville area, there's a place called Composition ID. If you are interested, I have a 10% off for the package, and you can check that out. And they give you resting metabolic rate and your body composition, which is really important because those two things really are accurate numbers, and they can help you determine how many calories you need to eat even if you don't work out. It also tells you where most of your fat mass is in your body versus lean body mass. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that topic today. I know it's a question that gets asked a lot, and I believe that high protein diet is very important for I'm not saying you totally have to cut off carbs. I'm not saying you totally have to cut off fat, but I think that it's very important that high protein diet is gonna be the biggest game changer in your progress, either for weight loss or for building muscle mass. So thanks for listening to the Train to Perform podcast with Julian Sisman. You can find me on prepareforperformance.com. You can follow us on social media for more tips and training and for training and fitness and sports performance at Prepare for Performance on Instagram. Hope you guys have a good day. See you later.